gas prices.
Gas prices.
Major refineries are leaving the state of California.
You have a lot of power to appoint people and to direct agencies.
What would you do as governor to balance the sort of environmental concerns and regulations
With the cost of gas in California.
First of all, yes, I'm an environmentalist. How can you not be in California? I mean, it's a defining thing about California is we love our amazing state, our natural beauty, the mountains, the beaches. That we all love that. And I want to protect that. But here's the big point on this. The environment, even green policies, that is not the same as climate and what we now hear being described as the climate agenda. And there's a lot more to environmental policy than carbon dioxide emissions and the climate. And so when I think about what it means to be an environmentalist, it's protecting our beautiful open spaces. Now let's talk about climate policy, because when the reason that we have the highest gas prices in the country, higher than Hawaii, in the middle of the Pacific Ocean, which is insane when you think about the fact that we have plentiful oil and gas reserves in California. We're paying higher gas prices than Hawaii. It is the direct result of what the Democrats call their climate agenda. So let's break it down. Number one, it's the gas tax. People focus on the gas tax. Yes, it's true that it's the highest in the country. It's about 65 cents of every gallon. But actually, a bigger component of the reason we have higher gas prices here than anywhere else is not the gas tax, it's these climate regulations. The low carbon fuel standard, which forces California providers to import ethanol from Iowa to mix with our own gas. It's insane. The cap and trade system, which is actually a tax, a hidden tax again, on anyone who produces or uses fossil fuels. That massively increases the price. But that tax, where's that money going? High-speed rail, which is obviously a complete disaster, not going anywhere. Then you look at the refinery regulations. It costs more to refine oil and gas here in California because you have all these different, you have a winter blend, and summer with complicated regulations. So refineries are closing down. And then the final component is the attack on our own oil and gas industry in California. So not that long ago, we used to produce most of the oil and gas that we use in California here in California, mainly in Kern County, where most of our oil reserves are. Now, most of it is imported. We only produce about 20%. We are importing oil from halfway across the world on giant super tankers spewing out carbon emissions. Guess where our number one provider of oil is today? It used to be California, the number one provider. Now, Iraq. How does that make any sense? Their environmental standards are much lower than ours. So all of these things that are done in the name of climate change are not even delivering those objectives, because we're actually increasing carbon emissions because we're importing all this oil when we could be using it. Instead of shipping it on these giant super tankers, we could be putting it in a nice clean pipeline from Kern County to the refineries on the coast. It's insane. It doesn't make any sense. It's not even meeting their own objectives. So I would get rid of all of that. And we can do that through changes to the regulatory environment. You don't need legislation. You do it through CARB, the California Air Resources Board. You replace the people there and you give them a clear mandate to deliver lower gas prices. And
Can you, as governor, unilaterally do that?
Yes, through CARB. And my plan is to repeal the low carbon fuel standard, to change the way cap and trade taxes are levied, to change the refinery regulations, to open up oil and gas production in California. All of that together, instead of where we've got now, which is $5 gas heading to $6 or even higher, my plan is for $3 gas in California. And I can do that through changes to the regulatory environment without legislation.
How much money do you get, or how much money do you think you will be getting from the oil and gas industry during this election?
Oh, as much as possible. I mean, I support that industry wholeheartedly. I want, we're going to need a lot of money to beat the Democrat machine.
The number one reason we have the highest cost of living is because of gas. Gasoline is a driver of the cost of living because no matter what we do, no matter what we buy, no matter what we consume, no matter what, everything has to be transported in. So the cost of transportation is the major driver of the cost of goods. And California suffers from the highest price of gasoline in the country by design.
Due to taxes and regulations, some of which the governor is responsible for, some of which the legislature has passed. Of course, the governor signed those bills into law, but you can't undo that as governor. And some of which voters passed, right? Some of these taxes are from voters themselves. How are you going to balance California's environmental policies, which are popular among many voters, with the cost of gas in California? And how are you going to keep oil refineries here, or are you going to?
By saying many voters is almost another psychological ploy to make us all think that we're all crazy. Everyone that drives a car is absolutely sick of the price of gas in California. We don't want gas. We're not for higher gas. We want cheaper gas. We don't want the government keeping that increase going year after year after year while they blame it on something else, knowing that they could lower it if they wanted to. It's not a 50-50 balance. We can make sure that we're protecting the environment, and we should. The rest of the country protects the environment too. California protects the environment on steroids where no one else is doing it. And so what we do, like on a global scale, is a minuscule fraction of 1% on the global scale. And yet we are all being punished for it because of someone's grand idea that they're going to save the world, save the planet, when no one else is. And how you save the planet is you charge us more for it. That makes absolutely no sense. The psychology of fooling someone is something it isn't because of the past. Perfect example is fossil fuels. Fossil fuels in other states that rely on fossil fuels, power plants, for instance, a coal-fired electric plant on full speed ahead, you can sit there and watch it work, and there is zero emissions going into the atmosphere. Zero. There's no pollution. There's nothing coming out but steam that dissipates. You know it's steam. They tell you that steam, it's a factual steam thing from inside because of all the cleaning and all of the restrictions and regulations that they have done, that the federal government has done, EPA, in the last 60, 70, 80, 90 years. Coal is not our enemy. Fossil fuels are the enemy of extremists and of activists, but coal isn't our enemy. Oil is not our enemy. We have made so many technological advancements that what we talk about in the past and what we scare each other about in the past would not happen today. It's not happening in other places.
How would you immediately reduce the cost of gas without harm to the environment on your first day as governor?
Gasoline. The regulations that increase it almost $2 a gallon. So that will be immediately reduced. And then the red tape that is preventing the drilling from happening, has anyone ever gone out and looked at the oil fields and looked at the drills and see what they do? You want to know what's worse for the environment than an oil rig every few places? 10,000 acres of solar panels. That's worse for the environment. But nobody talks about that. Nobody cares. Nobody even goes out and looks. They don't care. They just, it's the enemy. It's fossil fuels, the enemy. And but the activism part of the environment. Well, that's true. We care about the environment. We have to care about the environment. But the reality is we are caring about the environment. We're just stopping it from happening now because of these unrealistic fears of the past or of something that isn't true to begin with. And saying we're not going to allow it to happen because, number one, we don't want fossil fuels. We want everything to go electric that isn't doable anyway. And it's regulate them out of California, which now they've done. They're leaving. And
what would you do to get those
harming.
Refineries back?
The regulations have to go away. We have to allow drilling to occur. We have to stop importing 80% of our oil. When you talk about the environmentalists who love to save the world and save the planet, California is the only one that's doing something to save the planet, and we're not doing anything here. We're buying all of our oil from countries that couldn't care less about saving the planet. And the whole carbon footprint of shipping all the oil into our country, it's astronomical. It doesn't make sense. They can't argue the same thing in two different paragraphs in the same conversation and say that they want both, because it doesn't work. We take away the regulations. We allow the drilling to happen here. We stop importing oil. Why are we making other countries rich on the backs of Californians? It makes absolutely no sense. Texas isn't doing it. Alaska isn't doing it. Alaska gives rebates to its citizens from the oil sales that they do and the oil drilling that they do. Alaska, arguably, I believe California is by far the greatest state in the country, no matter what.
Would you say
arguably,
that, Texas?
I certainly would. Everybody in Texas wants to move back to California. They don't like hurricanes. They don't like tornadoes. They don't like bugs. They don't like humidity. California is perfect. California has the perfect environment. California has the perfect mountains, geography, geology, everything. But its politics are ruining it. And the politics are what are driving away business, driving away residents, and preventing residents like me who came here for the California dream. That no longer exists. There's no one in the country saying, if I want to make it, I need to move to California. No one's saying that anymore.
So you're obviously an environmental activist. You ran for president and you vowed to declare an environmental emergency on day one of your presidency. In your book last year, you wrote, "Climate is what matters most right now. Nothing else comes close." But the elephant in the room has been that your campaign ads don't even mention the environment. Have you had a change of heart? Is this something that's no longer a priority for you?
No, I have not had a change of heart, and it is a priority. I wrote a book, Julie, which I'm hoping that you will buy multiple copies of and give to all of your friends and family.
Christmas presents.
Cheaper, faster, better. How we win the climate war.
Okay.
When I'm talking about reducing electricity costs, which I'm talking about all the time in my campaign, I'm talking about climate. When I'm talking about clean air and reducing asthma for kids in California, I'm talking about climate. When I'm talking about economic competitiveness, about how do we in fact drive growth in the state of California, I'm talking about climate. Because we are at a place cheaper, faster, better. The way that we're going to solve the climate problem is by winning in the marketplace and actually solving people's short-term problems that also solve our long-term problems. Let's talk about cap and trade.
Okay.
Cap and trade is basically something that says polluter pays. That if you are polluting, you should pay for your pollution, that the common taxpayer, the common citizen should not be paying for
But
your
has it increased
pollution.
the cost of gas for California drivers?
A tax does, but the truth is we're trying to push this state to, but what we're really doing is trying to end up as an electric state. That is the future. That is the future for the world. That is the future for California. And that is the cheaper way to go.
But we're nowhere near that goal.
When you ask me, what do I think is the right way to combat? Look, I think the oil companies are trying to beat us up. I believe we need to develop alternative sources of gasoline in the state of California.
And what does that mean?
10 years to do it. That means we either get it shipped in from Asia, we get it from local states.
But we are doing that now. That's what they're doing.
That is where we have to go. We are going to end up, these
That
guys.
ends up with a lot more pollution, though,
Actually, I understand that ships do pollute, but in terms of where we have to go, this is a short-term solution, and we have to do it. Look, I'm for affordability. You're sitting here saying, yeah, they're gouging us, but they're saying they have to gouge us. That's actually what you're saying. We have a small
What's your definition of gouging?
overcharging. They are overcharging us dramatically, and you're saying it's because they're saying, oh, we won't be doing business there in a while. We can't afford to make
Well,
these
no,
upkeeps.
they're saying primarily we're doing it because California charges us to do business here through cap and trade and through these at-birth regulations and, a variety of other regulations.
Julie,
they
the
cost them
idea
more.
that you believe the oil companies, to me, is staggering.
I'm looking at the
Is
data.
Staggering. The data is they're charging us much more, and the issue is they're saying we have to charge more because of short-term needs. Look, you're assuming that the structure of this industry can never change, and we can never get anyone to change. That's not true. That's the issue. There's an assumption here that we are at the mercy of these oil companies. They can lie to you and get away with it. They can overcharge us and get away with it. They can be as arrogant as they want to be. Baloney. We have to actually change the structure. They're not unchangeable.
No, I hear what you're saying. My question to you, though, is do you have data or do you have actual projections? How much would it cost to actually ship crude, refined oil, gasoline in?
We are doing something where we have our own definition of acceptable gasoline. That is something, and so the only people who are doing it are people here. Can we get people overseas to do that for us? Yes. We have to do some work to do it. This is not going to be like, okay, we're done. If we stay with a tiny number of oil companies, with their hands around our throats, and they're saying, we're not ripping you off, this is what we have to do. They're going to say that forever.
So you're saying refine overseas, bring in the refined gasoline.
Or do it in local states.
And then, then you'd have to truck it in or ship it in either way.
Yes, I understand that. But
Now,
the
what's
point
the
is,
cost to consumers, though? What does that do? Do you have projections on how much that increases the cost of gas for consumers in California?
I don't think it's going to increase the cost. What you're saying to me, if you listen to yourself, is they're saying, look, we don't believe California is a long-term place for us.
Yeah.
We have to basically amortize our costs really fast.
No, they're saying we don't believe it's a long-term place, so we're leaving because we're not making money here.
But what that means is if you're going to keep up your refinery, you have to amortize that cost over a short number of years instead of a long number of years, which means you add the costs to the cost of gasoline over 2 years instead of over 5 years or 10 years. So the truth is, we're going to have to do this. But the other thing that's true here is the goal here, California leads the energy revolution in the world. The world is moving this way. This is a huge, you're looking at this, and it's important from an affordability standpoint that we solve this issue in the short run. But in the long run, we need to get away from these people.
In terms of gas prices, you're talking about this plan of having things refined overseas. Just to be clear, you don't actually have anything that you can give me that I can look at in terms of data and projections and what that would look like, right? This is sort of something that you would look at as governor.
I mean, oil and gas gets shipped around the world every single day in huge size. This is not something that's like unheard of, like we're gonna have to, are you aware of that? This is a huge...
Right, but there would be a cost to, first of all, building up those refineries, to finding someone to do it, then to shipping it. And so what I'm trying to gather is, what does that do? Yes, bringing in competition lowers gas prices.
We are a gigantic customer for anybody in this.
So the answer is no. I don't have anything to look at now, but that's something you would look at as governor.
But this is the answer.
Gas prices. What would you do as governor to balance the sort of environmental concerns and regulations with the cost of gas in California?
Yeah, so California's future is going to be green energy, but we also have to be realistic about where we are. So we are not where we need to be yet on electric vehicle charging stations, for example. We're not where we need to be yet on price point for electric vehicles, especially with the federal incentives going away. So we need those refineries to continue for the time being, but we should be making sure that we're investing in tomorrow's energy. The best way to have cheap, affordable energy is to have renewables that are produced right here in California. So I don't think the long-term goal has changed at all. We are creating a lot of good, high-paying jobs in renewables, but I think we're going to have to kind of stay the course with regard to our existing refinery capacity, protecting those California jobs, keeping gas as low as we can for the foreseeable future while that transition occurs.
What do you do about that lobby, frankly, and those folks who say we need to make gas more expensive so people don't buy gas-powered cars?
So look, the goal, I think, is clear, which is we want to protect our air. We want to make sure we're reducing rates of asthma. We want to make sure we're not dealing with worsening climate change. We're already feeling those effects. But we have to make the investments. So we have lots of tools at our disposal. So we need to make sure we're building those charging stations. Apartment buildings don't have them right now. It takes a long time to charge cars. When we get to a place where you can charge an electric vehicle as fast as you can fuel it with gas, that's going to be a really good, positive movement. I went to buy a car recently, and the electric vehicle was $8,000 more. I don't have an extra $8,000, and I think that makes me feel like very typical of a lot of Californians. So we have to keep making those investments, but I think the goal is to bring down that price point and to make electric vehicles the choice that consumers want.
And how do you as governor do that?
Well, so you make the investment. I mean, we are doing that already to some extent. So when the government puts up buildings, putting in electric charging stations, when we're thinking about funding or underwriting housing projects, making sure there are going to be charging stations, investing in green energy research projects, right, at our state universities. I work at UC Irvine. We do amazing research around energy, electricity, green hydrogen, all kinds of projects. And so we're going to have to keep doing that because Donald Trump is unfortunately pulling back on all those research projects. California just lost $500 million in a wind energy project in federal funding that Trump took away. That is bad for California, and it's bad for California consumers.
So back to gas, though. So we're talking about putting in this infrastructure. Where does that money come from?
It comes from the revenue, the general fund.
And so you would take money from what else in order to fund that?
Every governor has to allocate resources. And so it's always going to be a question of, you look at the entire budget, some things you're going to have to put more in some years, some things you're going to have to put less in. And Donald Trump, what he's done to us is pull on a lot of the different threads. We have healthcare challenges because of him. We have infrastructure challenges because of him.
So if we have those increased financial challenges and we're talking about building new infrastructure, which costs more money that we currently are not using from our general budget, where do you get that money? Like, where do you want to take, where do you find the money?
You have to make priority choices. That's what a budget is. It's a question of
priorities. And what is your priority in the budget?
Well, I'm not going to give you the entire budget right now.
No, but if you had to pick an issue, because we're going to go through all these issues,
Well,
and
let's get
everything
going.
here costs money.
Let's get going.
So, but is environment, though, one of your priority issues?
Of course it is. I'm the only I'm the candidate in this race. I'm not going to say only. I'm the candidate in this race who is not cashing checks from Chevron and big oil. I have a track record. I was on the House Natural Resources Committee. So I care a lot about clean air and clean water, and so do Californians, so do moms. We have to end up paying higher prices for healthcare because of asthma and other things. But we also live in the real world. So we're gonna have to think about how do we make those investments to get there. And it is gonna take time. Some of the investments are expensive.
So gas prices, what would you do to balance the sort of environmental impact with the cost of gas in California?
So you have to, again, recognize that everyone agrees that the price of gasoline is too high. And so the most important thing we can do is stabilize. Stabilize not just the price, but stabilize the supply and stabilize the distribution of gas. Because if you can provide some predictability, you won't see the spikes in the price of gas the way you see now. And so that means you have to give everyone, whether it's the industry or whether it's the consumer, a sense of what's going to come ahead of them. Everyone always know that during summer, vacations, people travel, more gas. You need more gas. Everyone knows during the winter, we use less gas. Okay, so you can factor that in. But what we have to do is make sure we've got the refinery capacity, we've got the distribution capacity, and the last thing we need to do is be importing oil into California.
And that's what's going to happen.
No, not if I'm governor.
How are you going to keep the oil companies here?
If they can make money, they're going to stay. If they don't want to stay and there's money to be made, we'll find someone who will replace them.
So
this is capitalism. People will come.
Now, so what does that mean for our current environmental policies, which are part of the reason that some of these folks are leaving?
Julie, we're never going backwards when it comes to what we need to do. We're not going to go back to the days when in LA your kids couldn't go outside to play because of the intense smog. You can go into the Central Valley today, which has some of the worst air quality in the country, and you know that many kids are now contracting asthma as a result of that. We're not going to try to go backwards and let it get worse. But what we're going to do is we're going to make sure all those families that can't afford to leave, that can't afford to just stay in a bubble, that they can come with us as we move towards a cleaner California, cleaner energy California. And what that means is we'll transition, but the way we'll transition is with stability. And that means we're going to keep in place our industries that let us bring everyone with us. Instead of saying we're going to get ahead of our skis and we're going to be the cleanest place in the universe, not just in the world, not just in the US, let's make sure we can get there because people have to believe us. And I think what happened was too many families in California who believe in clean energy, who believe in a clean environment, said, I can't catch up to you. You asked me to replace my gas stove with an electric stove. I can barely pay the gas bill. How do you expect me to replace the gas stove? Let's not get so far ahead of all the people we want to lead. Let's bring them with us. And we know how to do it. We've got the capacity here in California to do this. We don't need to shut that down and say, now I'm going to import it. We can do this, stabilize the supply, stabilize
Will you
the
make it
distribution.
easier to drill in Central Valley?
If that's what we need.
All right.
Well, we'll do what it's going to take. But everyone's got to come to the table, show their cards, so we know where we need to go. Because at the end of the day, we do this not because of one industry wanting it or one advocacy group wanting it. We do it because consumers want it.
What do you, as governor, do to balance the environmental policies with the cost of gas?
Well, balance is the key word. In San Jose, I helped set up San Jose Clean Energy, and we've led the state in procuring renewable energy, investing in innovation, so pairing solar and wind with battery storage. There's a lot more we can do through innovation, investments in infrastructure, and smart subsidies to promote clean energy and continue to decarbonize the grid and provide cleaner energy and have cleaner air and water and things that we all want. But we have to be smart about the transition. We have a lot of big promises. We're going to be carbon neutral by whatever date, pick your date in 5-10 years, without a plan to do it or the math around what it will cost people. The transition we need has to be led by what we are best at in California, which is innovation. We have to be able to offer people an attractive alternative that is safer, more reliable, cleaner, and more cost effectively. And in the long run, I do believe it may take 2 or 3 decades, we will have power that is safer, cleaner, and cheaper. But the transition matters and the details matter, and we should not be prematurely pushing the entire refining capacity out of a state that produces oil and gas while most Californians still fill up at the pump every week before we're ready for that transition. We're going to have to be able to do things in parallel. Ultimately, cleaner, more efficient electric vehicles and a cleaner grid will win because it delivers a more reliable, safer, healthier outcome. And we can do it cheaper, but we can't do it overnight. And I think sometimes we let our idealism get in the way of real results. As long as we're reliant on, so here's the great irony. We've effectively pushed all of the refining capacity and a lot of good high-paying jobs out of the state while we are just as reliant on the product they produce. So now we're paying to import it, which means more carbon impact because we've got to bring it in on trucks and ships. And we're paying more for it than we ever did. So the transition has to be driven by innovation and better alternatives. That's what we're doing in San Jose. I'll give you 2 quick examples of things that would be the next phase of this, that the state should be doubling down on. Virtual power plants. I don't know why this has not been implemented at a state level. I believe the bill was vetoed last year. We should be using technology to have a smarter grid that better balances supply and demand.
Wait, explain to me, what is a virtual power? Like, is this like Roblox where it like exists in a computer but doesn't actually exist in real life?
Well, here's the crazy thing. We have built out an energy system and grid in California and capacity to produce power that is twice what we need 99% of the time. We have
we
the
ship it
rest
off,
of it.
yeah.
We don't just ship it off. We actually pay Arizona to take our extra power. We pay them because we have too much. We're destabilizing the grid. We can better optimize this by storing power during the day, deploying it at night. We should be incentivizing all of those EV owners. In San Jose, we're now about 50-50 on new purchases. Almost 1 out of every 2 cars purchased is an EV. We should already be paying EV owners, or at least discounting power charges in the middle of the day when solar is cheap and abundant, when we're paying Arizona to take it because we have too much. Power up the battery during the day, plug in at night, and power the grid at night when the sun isn't shining and we need that power. We could be saving a ton of money by better aligning incentives. You've got to ask Sacramento. I'm trying to figure that out myself. I really don't know.
So here's my concern, though, right? It's like if you don't know, you're not going to be able to get it through because that means there are big, powerful interests killing it.
I was going to say, you just said it. Look, the truth is on a lot of these things, when they're common sense and we don't do them, it's that there's some interest that says, I'm going to lose a little bit of money on this, or that's not 100%. In my interest.
So do we know who the interest is, and can I go to them and say, why aren't we doing this?
Yeah, it's a good question. I don't know that I could be wrong. I don't know that the utilities are totally bought in on that solution. And that may be part of the issue. But I would say, if they're not, the answer is one of 2 things, and it may be both. One is, as governor, I will use the bully pulpit to point to real problems, real solutions, and demand that we do better. And that may mean upsetting interest groups. I would also say we have to look in the mirror because we have a lot of regulation in California, and we need to look at what we're incentivizing. Today, the way we set up our utilities, we incentivize them to want to build infrastructure because that's how they make money. So everything is a nail to a hammer. We say we're gonna pay you when you build infrastructure. Well, what are utilities going to want to do? Build infrastructure. We should be smarter and say maybe we give you incentives and pay you when you better balance load during the day and night, when you invest in storage, when you do things that maybe don't fall under infrastructure, when you deploy smart meters. And so although you could count that as infrastructure, but I guess my point is the incentives matter. And yes, there are interests that sometimes block change. There are also sometimes policies, laws, and incentives set up by state regulators that lead to the very outcomes we've got, even if they no longer make sense.
Gas prices. This has been a big conversation. Prior to redistricting, it was one of the primary topics at the Capitol.
And I'm the person that raised the issue first. I've been saying that. In fact, 6 years ago, I said the following: we can't continue to be a party of just people who drive luxury electric cars and not a Toyota pickup or ride a bus like my mother did. I knew this issue of affordability was an issue, and I raised that even back then when I said, yes, it's true we're the 4th largest economy in the world with the highest effective poverty rate. And what we've seen in this last election is that people voted for the man in the White House in no small part because of this issue of affordability, high gas prices, the highest in the country. The second highest utility costs that have gone up 60% in the last 6 years, and the highest home prices. So the issue of gas prices and affordability is something I've been raising for a long time now. And in the course of this campaign, you're right, others have now chimed in. But to be clear about the record, I'm the one that's been raising this from the beginning.
Now, when you were in the legislature, you really championed environmental policies. Do you think that any of those policies then have led to where we are in terms of gas prices now?
First of all, you're right. I had a 100% record, according to the California League of Conservation Voters. I have a record, but not just as mayor. As speaker. I also authored the largest school bond. The largest water bond, the largest park bond.
But going back to those environmental policies, I think critics would argue that that is part of what's leading to the high cost of gas in California. And what is your response to voters when they say, my gas price is high because of environmental policies, and you were the man who helped pass those environmental policies?
Well,
some of them.
And let me be clear. When I was mayor, I mentioned #1 American city in reducing carbon emissions, #5 in the world, the greenest port in the world, and we reduced our water consumption to 1970 levels when I had 1 million less people. I don't believe that those policies brought us to where we are today. I think policies since then that have continued to push down without the balance that we need. Here, let me give you an example. We've had, since I left, 2 refineries go down. So it's what they've done since I left. We built 167,000 charging stations in 10 years. We need 2 million more in the next 10 years to get to the 2035 mandate. If we built them, we wouldn't have if we built them tomorrow or 10 years from now, we wouldn't have the grid for it. So I'm challenging some of this stuff and saying, what are you doing?
So you wouldn't support 2035 mandate?
Well, it's not going to happen. Just like single payer wasn't going to happen. I'm a truth teller, Julie. I'm going to challenge what's broken. And it's not going to happen when we're not building transmission lines, which is why I've said we have to have an all of the above strategy, just like Norway does. You know, a very green country. Norway produces their own oil and gas. That's how they pay for the greening of Norway. You know, we want to close down refineries, put it on the backs of people who drive, at Ford 250 pickup, and not, and not build the transmission lines and the distribution that we need. So I'm going to focus on an all of the above approach. What does that mean? That means solar, it means wind, it means geothermal, it means big and little hydro, it means gas, as a transition fuel. We drive out any more refineries, even more people are going to go to the other side. Let's be clear about that. And I don't think that's good for California. So I'm going to work with those oil companies and work with the environmental community and work with the union jobs at those. It's really easy. These people say, oh, well, we'll retrain you. Well, where's the training programs to retrain them? Right now, we love to talk about how green we are. Do you know that 70% of our gas comes from Iraq, Saudi Arabia, Ecuador, countries that don't have democracies or functioning democracies? And, we produce, and in the case of Ecuador, tearing down, the Amazon to do it. So I think what you'll see is someone who believes in balance and on all of the above approach. And you know where I learned that? I learned that as a successful speaker and a successful mayor. At the end of the day, you have to balance things out. You can't just listen to any one group. But I'll tell you something. I have focused on the environment my entire life. You mentioned it. And I'll continue to do it. But it'll be climate action. We're going to build transmission lines again. We're going to have an all of the above approach to climate action. And we're going to make sure that we don't push out these refineries in a way that raises gas prices beyond what the vast majority of people can afford.
How do you balance environmental policies in California with higher prices of gas?
First thing we do is we give Californians a tax credit to help them pay for the higher cost of
And
gas.
what are we talking there? Like, I mean, am I going to get $100 back, a tax credit? How does that work?
Well, we're working on those details, and as governor, I'll make sure that it's a meaningful tax credit, because it's not going to just be for gas costs. It's got to be for cost of groceries and paying the high cost of housing.
Let me ask you this. Will that tax credit cover the difference between how much we pay in California versus another state? And
I think that it can.
do you think you'll be able to add that up and say, this is how much more tangibly, how much more you pay to be a California, your sunshine tax, and we'll give that back to you?
It has to be meaningful. And so, but California pays more for many reasons. There have been a lot of policies to protect the environment that we need, right? We have some of the highest rates of illness that come from industry and environmental issues, but we don't need to have policies that drive away jobs in the form of refineries that, before we're even ready to make the transition to non-gas industries. We still have to utilize the oil that's available to us.
And how do you keep those oil companies, the refineries, here in California?
Well, they need policies that don't drive them out. They're making decisions about where to invest in new infrastructure and new facilities. And because they perceive California as not being supportive of them at all, they're moving elsewhere. I think that we can do a better job at balance, that we can aspire towards environmental goals. Trust me, as a legislator, I pass legislation that says if you spill oil into our lakes and oceans, that you have to pay for that, because climate change is real, and we have to find ways to balance climate change. But we also have to invest in technologies like carbon capture that allow refineries to get safer. We have to look at other forms of technology. And
do you allow them to keep drilling or increase drilling? Because that's really what the issue is right now. Do we invest in updating our infrastructure if we're not going to be able to drill to get enough oil down the road to repay us?
Well, I think we start with the barrels that we have now. I think that there's enough now, and we have to prevent California from buying oil from other states, because that means higher prices for us. And so if we start with what we have in our supply, I think that we can continue to think through our environmental needs and our transition to less reliance on oil. There's no question we have to move to a place of less reliance on oil. The question is, how soon can we get there? If we're not ready to be there just yet, then we can do more to balance protecting those jobs. But there's no question we have to make the environment our top priority, or there's going to be nothing left for any of us here. For the air that we breathe, for the water that we drink, we have to continue to work to protect the environment.